Hello everyone and welcome back to the Race Edit. Today's video is going to be about the unsurprising friendship of Lewis Hamilton and Esteban Ocon. Aside from racing, one of my favorite things about Formula One is being able to witness the interaction between the drivers. Because although they're all rivals on track, it seems to be that for most of the drivers, this rivalry doesn't carry over off track. So, when we as viewers get to see nuggets of interaction between some of the fastest drivers in the world, it fascinates me. I do believe the drivers have a lot of things in common that they aren't able to explore, but if we're going to be honest, racing is their job, and like any other job, while you may have things in common with your colleagues and can have a great laugh with them, at the end of the day, they are still your colleagues. The only difference is with Formula One, there are generations of drivers that come up together, so it makes sense that real friendships do form between them over time. In the case of Esteban Ocon and Lewis Hamilton, though, they did not come up together. In fact, I would say that even though they're both currently racing, they come from different generations of Formula One. One debuted in 2007 and is near the end of his career, possibly, while the other debuted in 2016 and is mid-career, still leaving his mark on the sport. So, how did this random but unsurprising friendship form? To be clear, I'm not saying that they're the best of friends ever and do everything together, but there does seem to be a great deal of respect and camaraderie between the two. As we know, at the end of the 2018 season, Esteban Ocon was dropped from Force India, now Aston Martin, for Lance Stroll, meaning that he did not have a seat for the 2019 season. Mercedes, backing their junior driver, took him in as the reserve driver for the 2019 season, and in this is where I would say that Lewis Hamilton and Esteban Ocon probably and possibly got to know each other a bit better. But let's rewind a bit and start from the beginning to better understand why I think their friendship is not very surprising. Now, we all know how expensive motorsport is, especially Formula One. It is known as one of the most expensive sports in the world. Even if you come from a wealthy background, drivers and teams still need sponsorships to sustain them. So, if even the wealthy require sponsorships, imagine how hard it is for people who come from lower income backgrounds to get into Formula One. And to make it into Formula One, this is an expense that starts from karting and goes all the way through to the highest level. To be fair, Formula One has always been an expensive sport. It was made by the wealthy for the wealthy, and while in this modern era they are actively trying to open up the sport and diversify it, the change is probably not going to come anytime soon. So when you hear success stories like Ocon's and Hamilton's, it makes sense why they are so heavily highlighted when they succeed, because it is still rare to see people who don't come from wealth make it into the sport. I'm not saying that every single driver on the grid comes from a wealthy background, but Lewis Hamilton and Esteban Ocon have been vocal about their humble beginnings and the sacrifices that their parents have had to make in order for them to be where they are now. And this is one of the reasons why I think that they get along. They can relate to each other on this level. In an interview with The Guardian, Esteban Ocon talks about growing up as the son of a mechanic and witnessing his dad take rundown cars and bringing them back to life. He has always been around cars, and at the age of 4, after a chance go on a karting track, he fell in love. He says that his parents were the biggest supporters of his career, but that is too small of a word. They sacrificed their own life and put it to one side for him, to be able to chase his dream. They sacrificed everything they could for him to continue his racing career. His parents sold their house and lived in a caravan to support his early karting career. Esteban's dad took on every role needed to keep him racing. As mentioned in the article, his dad was the truckee, engineer, the planning and logistics, and mechanic, all in one. Esteban also mentions in that article the difficulties that the sacrifices his parents made and the pressure that put on him. He doesn't like talking about those days in his early career because they bring on tricky memories for him. I was young, but I never really had time to be young or to live and grow up as a normal kid. I didn't have the right to fail. I had to succeed. I felt the weight on my shoulders very early on, which made me grow up quicker at a young age. In a similar fashion, Lewis Hamilton has been vocal about his upbringing. His father Anthony was his #1 supporter when it came to his racing career. It was when Hamilton was 8 that his karting career began. He had a second-hand kart that his dad purchased. Anthony also recalled that he had to buy a trailer to put the go-kart on and spare tires, this, that, and the other, which was no easy feat as Anthony was also working up to 4 jobs at a time to support Lewis's racing. There was times when he was a double glazing salesman, dishwasher, and putting up signs for estate agents. Once he was done working, he would stay up at night to fix the kart as well. The Hamiltons also dealt with a lot of hardships during that time because not only were they a lower income family in the world of karting, But Lewis and his dad were also the only black family at every track that they would go to, and that came with its own difficulties and hardships. I bring up the history of Lewis Hamilton and Esteban Ocon to say that, compared to other drivers on the grid, they have an upbringing that a lot of fans of Formula One can relate to and can admire. Everyone loves a good rags to riches story and to see the underdog come out on top. Now, I don't make it my business to know the deep-rooted history behind every driver on the grid unless I am making a video about them, but because of their similar pathways into Formula One, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a reason as to why they seem to get along so well. Also, people who come from similar backgrounds do tend to gravitate towards each other. Outside of their humble beginnings, they also have some other things in common. For instance, both drivers were teammates with Fernando Alonso at one point in their career. I'm not saying they sit down and talk about Fernando Alonso at every chance they get, but hey, when you think about it, they both have had a tumultuous relationship with Alonso, resulting in Alonso leaving the team for greener pastures. And side note, of course, Alonso not getting along with his teammates is not the reason he left the teams, but it's just a similarity that these two have in common. Another thing that they have in common that's funny to me is that both Lewis and Esteban have a high-profile best friends to enemy story with another driver who just so happens to be their teammate. While Esteban and Pierre's at the moment is not as explosive as Lewis and Nico's, when Pierre and Esteban do clash, the claws tend to come out. They have seemed to rekindle their friendship now that they are on the same team, but we all know how quickly that can change. Overall, I'm not shocked that Lewis and Esteban are friends, or at the very least acquaintances, but what I can say is that with all these things they have in common, especially their similar upbringing, and the fact that Esteban was a Mercedes Junior and reserve driver, and he still seems to have close ties with Mercedes, it does make sense as to why they would get along. And truthfully, I just enjoy seeing these two interact and seeing the camaraderie between them. For example, when Esteban got his Monaco podium, Lewis was quick to congratulate him on his socials, and also when they raced their remote control cars in Suzuka, as a fan, that was really fun to see. Yes, the drivers have media obligations, but they also chose to do this because it's something that they both clearly have an interest in and enjoy. It's just so cool to see drivers from different teams interact and just have fun, especially two drivers who really came from the ground up and who a lot of fans can relate to. And I hope that we get to see more of this with other drivers as well. That's all I have for today. If you haven't had a chance to watch my other videos, please feel free to do so, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.